This is Executive Matters, and I am Bimbola Awoyele. This podcast's executive conversation is with a journalist and publisher whose career dates back to the Guardian newspaper in 1982. Frank Aigbogun, welcome to the executive seat. Mr. Aigbogun is a journalist and the publisher of BusinessDay newspaper, which he founded in 2001. For many years, he was the Lagos correspondent of the Associated Press, the world's largest independent news agency. He was appointed by the then military government into the Vision 2010 committee, which was tasked with drawing up a long-term economic vision for the country. He served as deputy leader and alternative rapporteur for the subcommittee on competition and deregulation. While working on the Vision 2010 project, Mr. Aigbogun was inspired to launch what is today Nigeria's first and only daily financial and business newspaper. The newspaper maintains content partnerships with the Financial Times, the Economist, as well as the Harvard Business Review. Today, Mr. Aigbogun serves as a director of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He also chairs the board of the Constitutional Rights Project, a leading human rights and advocacy group.
As a business leader, there seems to be a lot of demand on your time. So how do you relax? How do you find time to relax?
I relax, just enjoying time with the family.
Okay.
I relax watching football on television or talking about football with friends or my sons.
Okay.
I relax by grabbing a book and reading. So quite a number of things, despite the COVID, that are still possible to do by way of relaxation.
Interesting. Most of the business leaders that we have spoken to, they all say that they relax by grabbing a book, apart from other things, that they use to relax. Why do you think that is a common trend among business leaders?
I guess it's the quest or the hunger for knowledge. That hunger is always there. So if you don't have such an important thing to do, no meetings, then you have some time to spare. What a better way to do that? You grab a book and just enjoy it. And sometimes, because business people tend to read a lot and buy a lot of books, quite often there is always an unfinished part of the book. You grab and chew part of it now, you put it aside, you take another one to come back to it next time. So there's that craving. So when you have some time, you grab a book and it's quite satisfying as well.
Interesting. All right. Apart from, being able to use book to relax, how do you motivate yourself? Does book has anything to play in that as well?
I think so. Books tend to inspire you a lot. If you are one reading either business books or reading biographies of business leaders, I think you tend to be provoked. There's a spark in you, as you read these books. No question about it. But there are also other things that inspire you. Firstly is you have set goals, you have set objectives, and at every turn you are ticking on them, and there's always a pile of them undone. So that's a source for inspiration. Another source for inspiration is the kind of goals or preoccupation that you have set for yourself. If you are dealing with social service, if you're dealing with causes that are close to you, whether they be that related to the family or whether it's a cause that the cause you are committed to that is outside of the house, there is also inspiration for you there, because at every point you either remind yourself or you are reminded of, goals unattended to.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, as you look at your business, you think about it, and there's always something undone. So I don't think when you're at this that you're ever lacking in inspiration.
That is another common trend among business leaders, personally, that I've noticed, ability to be able to set new goals every now and then, appears to be another way of motivating themselves. I mean, you made a lot of points, but why is it a trend among business leaders?
Business itself and even the business environment or the economy at large is dynamic. So there's never a time when you sit your sword and say, oh, you've conquered. Never, unless, of course, the day that we breathe our last breath. There's always a new hope for you. There is always a knock on your door. There is always a call upon you to serve in one capacity or another. There is always a new way to do even the things you did yesterday. There is always something that you have not achieved. So this is common with business leaders who are forward-looking.
Fantastic. If you were to change one thing in your current industry, what would that be?
I think it would be precisely how we engage with our audience. We got into this business very presumptuously. We got into the business almost with the feeling that every day today, given the digitalization, we are finding that we know very little. So among journalists, the greatest number of people who believe they know everything. But now we're finding we know nothing. And for those who know that already, that's, I don't know whether to call it a convention or to call it a way of life or an approach. Our profession is being turned on its head. So we are now humbled, accepting that there is a lot more that we need to know if we must play our role as journalists. Yeah.
It takes a lot of strength to be able to admit that, especially at a time that journalism is at the crossroad, if I may put it that way. And, also at the point that journalism is most needed, in the history of mankind, looking at a couple of things that are happening globally. How are you going about, figuring it out on a daily basis?
The truth is, you do this on an ongoing basis. There isn't anyone, not even in any of the established media organizations, where there has been a measure of success in digitalization, where anyone will beat his chest and say he knows everything. You're discovering things as you go. There are people who have done great studies before they start a journey. There are those who just say, well, you take a dive and we'll get there to see how well we can swim in the water. So, and there's no one who's right, there's no one who's wrong, because in the end, as I say, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So your success and your success alone is the only determinant, not any book, not any philosophy or theory. It is your success or failure that determines whether you have succeeded or failed. That's the way it is.
Interesting. All right, let's go a bit bigger right now, looking at the current outlook of Africa in terms of the potentials of the continent, the opportunities, and of course the difficulties across several industries and several, areas on the continent. What are your opinions?
I'm hopeful about Africa. And Africa is an interesting continent. Before the pandemic, you saw a number of countries that were already beginning to push the right buttons. They were beginning to move in the right trajectory. And even in the pandemic situation that we are in, you are finding that some countries are more battered than the others, and it depends largely on how well they were before the pandemic came. When you are going and driving in a car at 100 kilometers an hour and you are going, when you get to the hill, you tend to get a bit more help as you ascend the hill. If you are driving a car that has virtually lost its engine, or its engine is almost knocked, and then you get to the hill, it's even more difficult as you try to ascend that hill. So Africa can be seen from those different prisms. There were countries that were in better shape before the pandemic came. And you find that those ones will go through this pandemic without being broken or battered and emerge from it faster. The ones that were very troubled before the pandemic came would manifest signs effects of that pandemic over a longer period than their other peers. Is the way I see Africa. But in the end, all the countries will overcome the pandemic. The ones who have started earlier will, of course, move. I was beginning to find some solace in Africa because as a journalist, it was difficult those days when you talk about different countries and all you had to do was to showcase examples from Europe. Increasingly, we're finding good examples in Africa.
Okay.
We're finding good examples in terms of conduct, in terms of governance, in terms of, social protection. We're finding good examples in terms of judiciary and rule of law. We're finding good examples in terms of institutions that are being built. We're finding good examples in collaborative work in Africa. So I think that gives me hope.
Fantastic. I think we're hopeful about Africa as well. Now, talking about the pandemic, what lessons have you learned?
Well, firstly is we now know that this is not the first pandemic, a global one. So we have it now. Those before us who had theirs, and I imagine there will be another one for the coming generation. First lesson is we must always humble ourselves after this and accept that we're not in good shape. Our health facilities and health infrastructure were not in good shape, and we must do the best that we can to bring them up to scratch so that when the next pandemic comes, we are better able to endure it. The other thing is the pandemic is a leveler. We're finding that even countries like America that boasted the best medical services, we've seen what leadership can do in a very short time and just bring a nation to its knees. So leadership is a major lesson of this pandemic. The need to improve the healthcare is another lesson. The other one is technology. We asked our children to go home because they couldn't go to school and suddenly found that they couldn't do e-learning because IT infrastructure was, not of this century. And so that's a number of lessons. And then, of course, for businesses to understand that there are cycles. There is the time when the economy won't do as well. Oil price collapsed. And businesses must build up resilience and be able to overcome disasters like this better when next they occur. But surely they will occur.
The need for leadership cannot be overemphasized. All right, let's get a bit more personal, sir. Who are your role models?
I have quite a number of people, but I don't want to name names here. But I choose, and it's part of what determines the books that I read. There are a number of people that I follow who have shown good examples in terms of integrity, who have shown good examples in terms of knowledge, who have shown good examples in terms of the confidence and to mobilize people around a common cause. I've been inspired by a number of such people who are around today, both in Nigeria and abroad. Yes.
And what would you like to be remembered for?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't think I know the answer to that, except to say that people should measure me by what I have accomplished in the profession I have accomplished as a person, without being boastful. But truth is, I came into this part of the world, entered journalism. I am at the peak of journalism now, and I guess that provides a good measure and how I can be remembered. What did I contribute to society? Did I just come and remain a passerby? Did I touch the community? And in what way did I touch the community, for good or for bad? I think those are clear points to which any measure can be drawn. Yeah.
All right. What is that one thing about you that people don't know? Is it that you can cook or you can sing? What is that one thing about you that most people don't know?
I enjoy watching football.
And what club do you support?
I won't tell you. I support Manchester United.
Man U, interesting.
Yes.
All right. On the final note, what are your advice to young CEO, maybe the ones in the media industry or across other industries? What are your advice?
Your start does not determine your finish. So never give up. Once you are on to the right thing, hang on to it and do the best you can. You never know. Success might just be around the corner.
That's a powerful one, sir. All right, I think that's all that we have time for. Thank you for that inspiring story, and of course for sharing a bit more of personal things about you with us as well on this show, Executive Matters.
Thank you.
All right.
You've been listening to Executive Matters. Join us for our next conversation with yet another industry captain on Africa Business Radio.